Clara had always lived in the same small town, a place where everyone knew everything about each other. It was the kind of town where people peeked through their curtains if a strange car passed by, and where stories traveled faster than the wind. She grew up on a small, weather-beaten farm with her mother, Mary. The house was old, with paint peeling off the walls and a front porch that creaked when you walked on it. Even so, it had once been filled with warm light and the sound of laughter. But as Clara got older, things changed. Mary had always been a strict woman. She cared deeply about how others saw her. In her mind, the family's reputation was the most important thing in the world. She worked hard to keep her home clean, her clothes neat, and her head held high. But Clara didn't fit into the perfect image Mary wanted to show the world. She was a big girl, and she often felt out of place. The children at school whispered behind her back. Some giggled when she walked by. She tried to ignore them, but the words always found a way to sink deep inside her heart. Mary often reminded her to walk straight, to eat less, to talk less, and to smile only when necessary. "People judge Clara," she would say, "and we don't give them reasons to talk." But no matter how hard Clara tried, it never seemed to be enough. She wanted to be loved for who she was, but her mother only saw what the neighbors might think. Clara loved the quiet moments more than anything, the early mornings when the sun was just rising over the hills and the birds were beginning to sing. She liked sitting under the big oak tree at the edge of the field, where she could imagine another life. In her daydreams, she was free from judgment, free from whispers, free from the weight she carried in her heart. Then one summer, her world shifted in a way she never imagined. Something happened that made her feel both confused and scared. As weeks went by, Clara began to notice small changes in herself that she couldn't ignore. She felt sick in the mornings, tired all the time, and her clothes started to fit differently. She didn't understand everything at first, but deep inside, she knew something serious was happening. When Mary found out, the quiet house filled with heavy silence. At first, she didn't speak a single word. She just stared at Clara with wide eyes that slowly hardened into cold anger. Mary's pride was everything to her, and in her mind, this situation would bring shame to their family. She imagined how the neighbors would whisper, how the people at church would look at her, how her name would be talked about in hushed tones. Instead of comforting her daughter, Mary pulled away. She stopped making Clara breakfast in the mornings. She avoided looking at her, and when she did speak, her words were sharp and cold. "Do you realize what you've done?" she asked one night, her voice low but trembling with emotion. Clara tried to speak, but no words came out. She just stood there, feeling small and broken, wishing someone would tell her everything was going to be okay. The news spread quickly through the small town, just as Mary had feared. People talked quietly when Clara passed them on the street. Some looked at her with pity, others with judgment. Every step outside felt like walking through a storm. Clara wanted to disappear, to hide in the fields where no one could see her. She felt alone even in her own home. Mary, too, felt trapped, but instead of seeing her daughter's pain, she focused only on how to fix what she believed was a mistake. She began thinking of ways to keep her name clean. She thought about sending Clara away or pretending nothing had happened. But every idea she came up with still left one problem. People would keep talking. She didn't want whispers. She wanted silence. One afternoon, as Clara sat under the oak tree with tears in her eyes, Mary made a decision that would change everything. She remembered Hank, the cowboy who lived far out on the edge of town. He was a giant of a man, known for his quiet ways and his large ranch. He lived alone most of the time and often came into town only for supplies. Many people feared him a little, not because he was unkind, but because he was different. Hank had cattle, horses, and land that stretched far beyond what most people in town owned. He was a man who kept to himself, never joining in gossip or gatherings. People said he had lost someone long ago, but no one really knew for sure. All they knew was that Hank was always willing to make deals when it came to livestock. Mary visited Hank one evening. Clara didn't know about it at the time. The sun was setting, turning the sky a soft orange when Mary walked down the dusty road toward Hank's ranch. She carried her pride with her like a shield. In her heart, she told herself she was doing what was best, not for Clara, but for their name. The conversation between Mary and Hank was simple but cold. Mary explained her situation, lowering her voice whenever she spoke about her daughter. Hank listened quietly, his face unreadable. He didn't judge or ask questions. He just stood there tall and silent. In the end, a deal was made. Mary walked back home that night with a decision carved into her mind. The next morning, Clara noticed something different in her mother's face. There was a strange calmness in her eyes, the kind that comes after someone makes up their mind. Mary called Clara into the kitchen. The old wooden table sat between them like a wall. Mary didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She spoke slowly and clearly as if she had rehearsed every word. "Clara," she said, "you can't stay here anymore." The words hung in the air like smoke. Clara blinked, unsure if she heard correctly. "What do you mean?" she asked softly. Mary sighed. "You've brought something into this house that I can't allow to ruin everything I've built. People will never stop talking. This town won't forget, and I can't live with that shame." Clara felt her heart pound in her chest. She wanted to shout, to beg, to ask her mother to understand, but no sound came out. Mary continued, "You'll be leaving tomorrow. Everything has been arranged." Clara didn't understand what arranged meant, not until Mary packed a small bag for her and laid it on the bed that night. She sat in her room staring at the faded wallpaper, trying to process the fact that the only home she had ever known no longer wanted her. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, listening to the sound of crickets outside. She thought about her childhood, about the times when her mother used to brush her hair before church, when she used to make her favorite pie, when the house didn't feel so cold. She wondered where that mother had gone. The next morning, the sky was gray. A cool breeze moved through the fields as a wagon approached their house. Hank was driving it. He wore a wide-brimmed hat and a plain shirt, his tall frame casting a long shadow. He didn't say much. He rarely did. Mary stood at the porch, her arms folded tightly across her chest. Clara came out with her small bag, her heart heavy. She looked at her mother, hoping for some kind of last-minute kindness, a hug, a tear, anything. But Mary's face stayed hard and still. Clara stepped onto the wagon. The wooden wheels creaked as Hank guided the horses down the road. She turned her head one last time to look at the old house. She thought about all the memories trapped inside those walls, both good and bad. Mary didn't wave. She just turned and went back inside, closing the door softly behind her. As the wagon moved farther away, Clara felt both fear and a strange kind of numbness. She didn't know what was waiting for her at the ranch. She didn't know if she would ever come back. The town slowly disappeared behind her, and the only sound left was the steady rhythm of the horses' hooves. The road stretched long and quiet. Trees lined the way, their leaves rustling in the wind. The sky above was wide and endless. Clara sat silently, clutching the strap of her bag. Her heart was a storm of confusion, hurt, and unanswered questions. When they reached Hank's ranch, Clara saw the vast open land for the first time. It was big, bigger than anything she had ever seen. The fences went on, and the house stood alone like a watchful giant. It was quiet, almost too quiet. Hank helped her down from the wagon without saying much. Clara stood there, unsure what to do or where to go. She felt like a stranger in a world she had never asked to enter. Somewhere deep inside, a small part of her still hoped her mother would change her mind and come for her, but that hope grew dimmer as the sun dipped below the horizon. That night, as Clara lay on the narrow bed in a room she didn't know, she stared out the window at the star-filled sky. The world felt larger than ever, but she felt smaller than she had ever felt before. She thought about the oak tree, the fields, the old creaky porch. She thought about the life that had been taken from her in a single morning. She didn't cry, not that night. The tears had already been shed in silence long before she climbed into that wagon. Instead, she just whispered to herself in the dark, promising she wouldn't forget who she was, even if everyone else did. The first morning at the ranch felt like waking up in a world that didn't belong to Clara. The air was colder, the walls were bare, and every sound echoed. She opened her eyes slowly, hearing the distant call of a rooster and the wind brushing against the window. For a moment, she almost thought she was back home. But then she remembered everything. She sat up in bed and stared at the small, unfamiliar room with its wooden floor and single chair by the door. Hank had already left the house by the time Clara stepped outside. She saw him in the distance, tending to the animals, moving slowly and steadily, like he had done it all his life. The ranch stretched wide and silent, with rolling fields and tall fences disappearing into the horizon. It was a place built for work, not for dreams. No one had explained what she was supposed to do there. She simply followed her instincts and began helping where she could. She cleaned the kitchen, swept the floors, and carried water from the well. No one asked her to, but she wanted something to hold on to, something that made her feel a little less lost. Hank wasn't a man of many words. He rarely spoke, and when he did, his voice was low and quiet. He didn't smile or frown much. His face stayed calm, like the land around him. He showed her the chores one by one without saying much. She learned how to feed the chickens, how to brush the horses, and how to collect eggs from the barn. It wasn't easy, but Clara worked hard every day. The days turned into weeks. Clara's world became a routine of early mornings, long chores, and silent nights. She often sat on the porch in the evening looking at the stars. They were brighter there than in town, like a blanket of tiny light stretched over her head. In those quiet moments, she thought about the past. She thought about her mother, about the oak tree, about the girl she used to be. Sometimes she felt tears welling up, but she pushed them back. She didn't want to feel weak. Slowly, she began to learn how to take care of herself in this new place. She found small comforts in the work. She liked brushing the horses. They didn't judge her or whisper about her. She liked planting small flowers near the house even though no one told her to. She liked walking to the fence line where the wind was strong and wild, and she could close her eyes and pretend she was free. As time went on, Clara's body began to change more. The child growing inside her became more real with each passing day. She placed her hand on her stomach often, whispering soft words no one else could hear. The thought of being a mother scared her, but it also gave her strength. For the first time, she had something that was truly hers, someone she could love and protect. Hank noticed her changing, but he didn't ask questions. He didn't offer kindness, but he didn't show anger either. He simply went on with his days as if she was just another part of the ranch. Clara sometimes wished he would talk to her even just a little so she wouldn't feel so invisible. But Hank was a man who carried silence like a coat. When the day finally came for Clara to give birth, the sky outside was dark with clouds. Rain fell steadily on the tin roof, creating a soft rhythm in the house. A kind woman from a nearby farm came to help her. Her name was Mrs. Dawson, a woman with gentle hands and a voice that made everything feel a little less frightening. She held Clara's hand through the long hours, whispering words of comfort and strength. When the baby's cry filled the room for the first time, Clara felt something inside her shift. She looked down at the tiny face and saw not just a child, but a new beginning. Her heart swelled with emotions she had never felt before. All the loneliness, all the whispers, all the cold stares from the past faded for that one moment. She wasn't just the girl who had been sent away anymore. She was a mother. Life didn't suddenly become easy. The days after the baby was born were hard and tiring. Clara spent her nights rocking the child, whispering lullabies she made up as she went. She named her daughter Hope because that was what she wanted to hold on to most. Every time she looked into her baby's eyes, she felt a quiet strength growing inside her. She learned to do everything on her own, cooking, cleaning, working, and caring for Hope. Hank continued with his chores, occasionally leaving her small bags of food or blankets without saying anything. Though he wasn't warm, he wasn't unkind either. He gave her space, and in some quiet way, he allowed her to build her small world. One day, while walking near the fence with Hope in her arms, Clara met one of the ranch hands. His name was Sam, a kind man with tired eyes and a gentle smile. Unlike Hank, Sam talked. He told her stories about the ranch, about the nearby towns, about the river that flowed far beyond the hills. He treated her like a person, not a problem. Sam noticed the way Clara always stared at the horizon, as if she was looking for something. One evening, as the sun painted the sky orange, he said softly, "You dream of leaving here, don't you?" Clara looked down at her daughter and nodded. She didn't say anything, but her eyes told the story. From that day, Sam became her quiet friend. He would bring her small things from town, a ribbon for Hope, a little book, a piece of candy. These small acts of kindness warmed a part of Clara's heart that had been cold for a long time. She began to smile again, even if only for a moment each day. As the seasons changed, so did Clara. She was no longer the scared, quiet girl who had arrived on the ranch. She had learned how to work the fields, care for animals, and raise her child. Her hands had grown strong, but so had her spirit. She discovered she was capable of more than she had ever believed. One spring afternoon, Sam told her something that made her heart beat faster. "The road isn't as far as it seems," he said. "There are towns beyond these hills. People start new lives there all the time." Clara held those words close like a secret treasure. She didn't make any sudden plans, but something inside her began to bloom. A small voice whispered that maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to stay here forever. As the months passed, Hank grew older and slower. His steps were less steady, and he spent more time sitting on the porch than working in the fields. He wasn't cruel to Clara, but he was distant, living in a world of his own. She didn't blame him. In a strange way, his silence had given her the space to grow stronger. Then one warm evening, Clara stood outside holding Hope in her arms, watching the sunset. The air smelled like grass and spring rain. Sam walked up to her and looked at the road beyond the ranch. "If you ever decide to go," he said softly, "I'll help you." Clara didn't answer right away. She looked at her daughter's tiny hand resting against her chest. She thought about her past, the house she had left behind, the mother who had turned away, the girl who had climbed into a wagon without hope. She wasn't that girl anymore. She was someone new, someone braver. Weeks later, Clara made her decision. She didn't announce it loudly. It lived quietly in her heart like a steady flame. Sam helped her pack a small bag, just enough for her and Hope. One night, when the sky was filled with stars, they left the ranch behind. The road stretched out before them, long and open. The air felt different that night, softer, freer. Clara carried Hope close to her chest as they walked. She didn't know exactly where the road would lead, but for the first time she wasn't afraid of not knowing. As they moved farther away from the ranch, Clara felt the weight of her past slowly lift. The voices that once whispered behind her back grew distant, fading like old echoes. The girl who had once been sent away had become a woman who chose her own path. Days later, Clara and Hope arrived in a small town beyond the hills. It wasn't perfect, but it was new. She found work helping at a small bakery run by a kind woman who offered her a place to stay. The townspeople didn't know her story, and she didn't offer it. She simply started again, one step at a time. Each morning she held Hope and watched the sun rise over the new town. She no longer felt trapped by what others thought of her. She had survived, she had grown, and she had found a way to begin again. Clara's journey had been filled with pain, silence, and long, lonely nights. But it had also taught her something no one could ever take away: her strength. She learned that hope can grow in the quietest corners, that courage can rise from brokenness, and that a single choice can change everything. She whispered to her daughter each night, "We are free now." And as the stars watched from above, Clara knew she had finally become the woman she was always meant to be.